Welcome to Real Talk. This is a special episode. We have a special guest. One thing I want to talk about this guest is you would not see him giving a lot of interviews. He would not be participating in a lot of podcasts. He's kindly agreed to be part of our podcast. We are thrilled to welcome cricket legend Robin Singh. Renowned as one of India's finest all-rounder, Robin's career is marked by grit, discipline, and unforgettable performances under pressure. Let's dive into his inspiring journey and unmatched insights. I'd also like to take this opportunity. We have a special host. His name is Rajesh Balakrishnan. He is spent more than 2 decades in consulting and globally advised a lot of customers across different industries. So welcome Robin and welcome Rajesh.
Thank you, Nagraj, for having me on the special podcast for UAE National Day.
Robin, I quickly wanted to understand, when did you realize that you love playing cricket and how did it all start?
Um, I think cricket started in the West Indies when I was a young boy. Um, most of us grew up in an environment where we all played sports. Cricket was one of the sports. Actually, we played a lot of football. Um, Most of us went to the same school, primary school, and I think most people in the area actually played something or the other for the school or represented the school in different fields. It can even be things like poetry and stuff. So I remember my sister was one of them who actually represented the school. But I think from a sporting perspective, we just played the game. Where I grew up, my father and them had a club, so they were the ones who actually gave the land for the ground. And then prior to that, there were other people who gave land, so they developed the ground. And most Indian families had a lot of land those days, a lot of agricultural land, so they turned that around and made it into a field. So you find the whole community actually would gather there almost every evening to play, and it was pretty serious because I remember as a small boy watching them train, and it was, even though it was just cricket for fun for a community, it was what we say is real bonding. People who wanted to win, but for a community. So there was no real agenda except to win. That's how we actually learned the sport, grew up playing the sport, picked up from people who were playing the sport. And as a young boy, I had many heroes playing the sport in my club. So I think my heroes are actually from the club that I played, where I grew up. It's not international heroes. I remember there were three guys. There was a guy called Winston Hodlin. I met him recently when I went back to Trinidad. He's probably about 75, 80. And he still tells me, I see IPL and I think I can still play. He was that good. I remember us looking up to him as a small boy. He was a terrific all-rounder. Then we had another guy called, we used to call him Hills. He was a fast bowler, like out-and-out fast bowler. And then I had a lot of cousins who played some really good cricket. So, I think that's where it all started. And then when the cricket season's over, we used to go into football. So it is the same group of guys.
Multi-sporting culture.
Multi-sporting culture. And then a lot of us used to get involved in running, because we all went to school and we had to actually walk a long way. So in the morning, it's like, who can get to school first to actually get the place to play?
Okay.
So these small things like that.
So when did you first ever pick a cricket bat? What age?
That's very hard to say, but must be pretty young. I mean, less than 5, 4, 3 maybe.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But I played for the school when I was 7.
Fantastic.
So I was picked up there was a teacher in the school who actually saw me play. And we used to play on these, roads that had gravel. They were not paved roads. So it was very tough to play. We used to play tennis ball cricket. And he saw me playing, and then he picked me for the school. He came down and said, "You're playing for the school." I said, "Really? I've never played any level of cricket. It was just for fun. No, you're playing for the school." It was hardball cricket.
It's a hardball cricket.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you started playing for the school under 7 with
Under 11
under 11
with hardball.
with hardball cricket.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's one thing which has always kind of made me curious is how does someone become a left-hander or right-hander? I mean, how does that happen?
I think it's just natural. I mean, whatever I was doing, I probably batted left-handed. My mom does a lot of stuff with her left hand, so probably naturally it happens.
Or is it because you've come across some local heroes playing for your
No, not
club and
really.
they've...
It's just natural. I mean, I do a lot of stuff with my left hand. I can kick with both feet when I play football with my left or my right. So it's one of those things. I mean, it's an advantage to a large extent, I would say.
So you write with right hand?
Yeah.
Obviously, you've been medium pacer, you bowl
Yeah.
with right hand, but batting is left-hander.
Yeah. But
Okay.
when I play football, I can kick with both feet.
Interesting. And then how did it go on from there? You started playing for school. Then how did it progress? And when did you come to India and how did that happen? I'm sure a lot of these things are there in Wikipedia and internet, but it's always good to know from a person who's lived the journey because that is most factual ones.
Well, I think from school cricket, after going to primary school, even there I played for the senior team when I was in Form 1, when I was 11. So that was pretty unheard of in those days in school. So that was hardball cricket again. And again, I was picked up by a couple of teachers in school. There was a guy called Mervyn Ali. And there was another teacher, if I remember clearly. He's no more now, but his name was Mr. Otello. And I was smashing these guys around. And the ball was going all over the school. And they came and they said, "You're playing for the school." So I was like really nervous, at a small kid. And and that's how it was really. I played for the school. Then from there, I did exceptionally well. The first game I played, which I never forgot actually, I have these Grey Nichols bat, and I got 45, but I hit 10 fours. So
You have started a IPL way of playing long back, looks like.
Yeah, I hit 10 fours and I got out. I got caught behind and I walked out. The umpire didn't give me out. So it was like a big thing, in school. So the headmaster called me in front of the school because we had won. And he called me up in front of the assembly in the morning. I was like pretty nervous that you have to go in front of the assembly and stand. And of course, you pretty much applauded. But saying that, I think that's where the journey really started, to be honest. And from then on, we were not one of the biggest schools because it was all area-wise, right, where we went to school. But it was very challenging to make a national team from where we were. So the concept does not change across the globe, really and truly. So the bigger clubs they had the advantage of pushing who they are, the bigger schools. So, when you play school cricket, you need to beat the big schools to stand out. And we did that pretty effectively. And I think from then onwards, we sort of made ourselves notice. And I got picked up for the school teams, the Indian school teams. We played against some international teams that came about. Then our local club, we used to play what we call under 19 cricket, Colts cricket. They used to have a Saturday league and a Sunday league. So we would play school cricket, we'd play Saturday league, then Sunday morning we'd play Colts cricket, and Sunday afternoon we'll play. So the entire weekend was dedicated to cricket during the cricket season. And of course, in school, we'd play almost 3 or 4 days a week. So roughly you're playing 5-6 days a week, right? With no other sport at that time. That would go on for about 6 months a year. So, and then we had a tournament during the rainy season. So there are 2 seasons in Trinidad while growing up. They have the rainy season and it starts in June, July. Then we'd play wet ball cricket. So we'd play cricket in the rain, right? On really bad wickets. So it really helps you.
So it used to be a pitch or it's...
normal sand wicket. We used to play on sand wicket with a mat.
With a mat on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was like very difficult to play. Sometimes you hit, the ball would get heavy, you'd hit the ball, it won't travel, the outfield will be wet. But the point is, it was extremely challenging, but it helped helped you develop, right? It was not dangerous, it was just challenging, And
so you played till under 19?
Yeah, so I made the under 19 Trinidad team when I was 15. So yeah, I got selected for Trinidad team when I was 15. But the key to that was I was playing for the senior team, our club senior team, in a tournament, and I got 251
In a
in a senior team game against that was
in a
like
senior team
yeah,
game, not a
yeah.
season game.
No, in a game. So I sub at number 3. So I got 251. 251 not out.
What sort of a
It
game is
was
this? It's a 3-day,
it's a 2-day game.
2-day game. Wow. Okay.
It's a 2-day game, and it used to be uh, it's used to be a league, one of the better leagues, right? That we used to play in our club side, and then of course you get noticed. Then they call me for trials. They pick me for the under 19 team, Trinidad under 19 team, and we had what you call South Zone, North Zone, all these sort of trials, and got picked up. Then at 16, I was selected for Trinidad national team also. Then I captained Trinidad team for 2 years after that, before I came to India.
So how did that happen? Obviously you're doing extremely well in cricket there. And when did
I
you
think-
think of switching?
Yeah, so it was a pretty conscious decision to move. But I think before that, being in the national team, I was in the national team for about 2 years, but didn't play a single game. Because they said I was too young.
Okay.
But we had lost all the games. The funny thing is, we had lost all the games. We used to play 4-day games. At that time in Trinidad, it was called Shell Shield. So I started my journey with people like Larry Gomes and Logie and all these guys.
Gus Logie, Larry Gomes.
Malcolm Marshall, all these guys were playing. Clive Lloyd, Kalicharan, whoever, Ford Bacchus, to name a few, just to name a few. So my debut was against actually Courtney Walsh and Patrick Patterson. Right? And remember those days we never used to play with helmets.
Yeah.
There were no helmets. Right? And there were no restrictions, especially
terms of-
bouncer
yeah,
restrictions. So, I mean, you had to be able to tackle things. You had to practice to play the short ball more than anything else. A lot of back foot game, not too much front foot cricket. And you find that generation, a lot of back foot cricket. If you go back and you look at YouTube videos, you will see the game is predominantly back foot. Very few people would be actually playing on the front foot. So the game has sort of shifted the other way around. Yeah, I guess because of things like helmets and stuff. But yeah, and that was it. And then when Hyderabad Blues came, it was a team from India that came on a touring team. They played against Trinidad team. So they played 3 games against us, and all 3 games I did exceptionally well against them. So it was like a combined team that had played. So there was a guy called Akbar Ibrahim who was part of that. So he actually asked me, why don't you come to India? And at the same time, I thought it was a good opportunity to pursue my cricket. Not looking at playing for India anywhere at all. And then, of course, to further my studies. Right? So at the same time, I tried to combine both. So it was a conscious opportunity to get away from cricket in the West Indies, because there was no real growth for cricket in the West Indies. You had to make a serious choice. And either you do it very quickly, or you wait. I think waiting was a problem, because you had such a strong West Indies team. I don't think anybody could have got into that West Indies team for the next 7 to 10 years unless you were exceptionally good. I mean, you had to be at a totally different level, better than the guys who were playing. So that was the real journey, and that's how it started.
Great. So when you moved to India, I mean, you studied in which?
I studied in Pachipas, but I also stayed with Akbar initially when I came. Then I moved out, and then was on my own after that. But I think the college was pretty nice, because we used to get a lot of time off to play. So I actually structured my cricket and studies slightly differently. I would finish off whatever I had to do. My entire syllabus I'd finish in a month and a half. I'd hired a professor to help me with that. And then I would focus on my cricket. And then again, 1 month before, I would again go back and do the same process to try and prepare for exams and stuff like that. Because we could write once a year. It was not every 6 months you can write an exam, right?
So what did you specialize in? Is it commerce
Economics.
group? Economics.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So there is an economics graduate. Interesting. A lot of things I am actually learning, about you. Since you mentioned Pachai Pass, I think I'm also quite curious. A lot of times the way things are portrayed in the media as well as in movies, right? There is always a rivalry between Pachai Pass and Loyola. Was it actually existed at that point in time?
Yeah, there was a rivalry, but I never got involved in all these things because I think for me it was about playing cricket and winning for the college that I played, right? So I sort of got the intensity going because we played cricket quite intensive. I mean, there was no fun in playing the game if you don't win. That was the attitude. So it was about being aggressive cricket, playing aggressive cricket, and I played very aggressive cricket.
And sporting also, cricket as well, was happening between Pachai Pass, Loyola, and other colleges as well. Or
Yeah.
by that time you had shifted to playing for state.
No, I played for state, but at the same time, even when we were playing college cricket, right, it was about winning for the college, right? So, I never thought about, because for us, we never saw this sort of rivalry in the West Indies, right? I mean, you'd have rivalry among clubs, but you wouldn't see it among universities and stuff, right? And it would be there in schools. But again, it was not that aggressive. There was no violence or anything like that. I mean, I heard about a lot of stuff, but it didn't really happen in my time, to be honest.
Fantastic. Thanks, Robin. I want to quickly now shift gears to your playing days for India. I mean, one thing I really wanted to understand, and probably for our viewers as well, is during your playing days, who would be the closest teammate you would consider as, where your wavelengths match and probably go to practice together or discuss cricket on and off field, things like that?
I wouldn't say there is one person, to be honest. There is no one particular person. Because I think the journey is a very long journey. So, I used to live with Senthil Nadan. We used to share rooms. So we practiced quite a lot together because we played in Chennai when I came here. I played a lot of cricket for a club called Globetrotters. And that team was supported a lot by a guy called Mr. Soundarajan. He had owned a paper mill. So he is the one who supported a lot of cricketers. So I think my journey over here, initially I started playing for MCC, Madras Cricket Club. And from then onwards, you find your way, you try to blend in, because I had to blend into a society that was pretty new to me, right? In more ways
Coming
than
from,
one.
yeah.
So the challenge was to be able to do that and still play cricket with the intensity at which you wanted to.
Fantastic. And then when you started playing for India, I mean, would there be any players you kind of relate to really well? Because again, you played for India for quite some time.
Yeah, like when I played for India the first time, I would say that Kapil was a great inspiration. I mean, I got a lot of help from him when I went on tour, and Venkatramana was part of that group, which we were from Chennai anyway together. So we spent a fair amount of time when on tour. I'd say Azad was a good support. It's always been a good supporter. And most of the guys who were known to me, to be honest, because I didn't really know too many of the Bombay guys at that time or the Delhi guys at that time. We play against each other, but you don't spend too much time. So it doesn't mean that if you play against each other, you know each other. You don't. Because to really understand someone, you have to spend time with them, understand their thinking, what they're all about, how much help can you get from them, what can you give back in return, etc. So I think it's the people who I spent a lot of time with in Chennai. But if there was one person who made a huge difference to my cricket when I came to India, it was Brijesh Patel.
Brijesh Patel. He was running NCA for a long time, right?
He was the club captain for the team that I spoke about, Globetrotters. and he actually helped me quite a lot. That's the transition, actually, in my opinion. So between the ages of 19 to 21, you learn a lot if you're ready to learn, right? You need to be absorbing everything like a sponge, literally speaking. It's more about listening, observing, taking on board, as opposed to talking too much, right? You can ask questions, but because cricket is a lot to do with, it's practically you have to do it out there. As much as people may look at stats and data and all that and tell you, yeah, we can process the information, but you have to actually do it on the ground. And the moment you do that, then the information that you have from any software or computer, you can process that much easier.
Okay. A lot of parents actually want their sons or daughters, especially in Asian culture and specifically in India, to play for the country. What would be like top 2 or 3 things parents should first understand and also help their kids understand if they really want to play the sport at the highest level?
First thing is you understand that you need to accept the fact that you will fail more than you will succeed. Okay? If you play 10 innings, you probably will fail 8 times. If you fail 8 times, right? And what is a failure? It's really relevant, no? It's a failure. It's, to me, a failure is if I get 50 and I get out, it's a failure. I didn't get 50, right? So you set your benchmark, you set your goals, right? So most people start setting the benchmarks based on what others are doing, right? And who is the top. It's like a classroom, right? Who is the top person? You need to be that person. That becomes your benchmark. But if your benchmark is only to be there, then you don't succeed. But in terms of failure, most of the times you fail. Most of the times you fail. And most people are not able to accept that. Now, people who do not play the sport, right? That's why we say you need to move away a little bit. You need to let whoever's playing the sport go through the process, right? They have to feel the failure. And you have to accept that failure. The quicker you can do that, the faster you will succeed. Because you need to be realistic. You need to think, okay, I didn't do this, I need to do this. How do I want to succeed? It's a question about how determined you are, how much patience you are, what is your resilience. Work ethics, second to none, right? Everyone has talent. It's how do you take that talent and translate that into performance. Now, that's only the start. As you keep going further, you have to continuously keep reassessing those things and resetting those goals.
Interesting. On the same note, what is the best age for boy or a girl to start picking up a ball to become a bowler or to have a go with the batting? Is there
There is no best age.
Okay.
There is no best age. If you look at football, right? I mean, I started playing for the school at 7, but we were playing cricket from the ages of 3, 4, with everyone. So you're involved in everything, right? And as you keep playing and you keep learning from people and anyone you can learn from, it doesn't matter who it is, right? But the thing is, you have to like the sport.
You have to like the sport, and what you're saying, if I've understood clearly, it's also putting in that time and effort. Even if you start at 7, doesn't matter, but as long as you've been consistently playing the sport.
Yeah, and look, there are certain philosophies that I have put in place, right? And you find that a lot of people play, and the more you play, the better you become as you start growing. As you get older, we try to restrict it because we want to preserve ourselves and stuff like that, right? But there is nothing like actually playing the sport and being in touch consistently, right? And you need to be hungry. That is key, if you're not hungry to play and you just rock up, and it's okay if you get out, or it's okay if I come up and bowl, and you don't feel the pulse, right? If you know what I mean. There is no point.
Yeah, I mean, you have told me before as well, when we have met once, within first 15-20 minutes you can spot a talent who can actually, if they have the work ethic, who can end up playing sport at a highest level.
Yeah, I mean, I would say sometimes even less than that. right? But I think more importantly is when you speak to someone, right? So the physical aspect and everything else come into play, right? And you can see things. But when you talk to someone or you see them play for 5-10 minutes and you put them into certain situations or different situations, right, that can test them, you will be able to find out.
Okay. So, great. From this, what I really wanted to understand is being a vegetarian myself.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a challenge being just a vegetarian or a vegan to be playing sport at the highest form?
Look, I'm veg today. I used to eat non-veg. I stopped in '89, but I've never found it to be a challenge. Personally, I've never found it. I cannot answer that question for us, to be honest. I think it's up to each individual, right? Um, Sometimes I feel it's a mind over matter thing. Today, you have so many other supplements to go with it. People go to the gym and they use all these protein shakes and stuff like that. I have never used any of those things.
Okay.
I try to do things or keep things as simple as possible and as natural as possible.
Stick to basics.
Yeah, and exactly, so that you're pretty much in control with what you want to do
Okay.
without reliance.
Okay. Is talent alone enough for upcoming aspiring boys or girls to play at the highest level?
No, without a doubt, no.
What else they need to focus
I
on?
just told you, you need to be resilient. You need to be ready to pick yourself up when you fail. You fail more often than not, right? Most times, you need to have some serious determination. You need to be able to come out of adverse situations. It's how do you pick yourself up when you when you fail?
When you're
Now,
down.
what is failure in your book? What is success in your book? Right?
And how
it
do
is
they-
defined very differently, right? Now, to me, I think there's a huge mental block when people talk about success and failure, right? And when we say this is success and this is failure, it's almost like saying
Black
you
and
can't go
white.
beyond that, right? I think you need to think beyond that.
So how do they demonstrate if someone does not get an opportunity or get picked for whatever? Let's talk about school team or club team, right? How, because you've played a role as a coach, how do you spot that who's got the ability to bounce back from so-called failure or not doing well? Unless they get a chance, as a coach, you would not be able to say. So what is the best way for them to get a chance?
So it's like saying, I didn't get a chance to play today, so I won't turn up for practice. So where's the commitment? So you can't always get a chance. I mean, if you don't get a chance, most people will complain. So if you don't get a chance for the season, maybe you're not good enough. Maybe something else is wrong. Maybe you're not committed enough. We don't know, right? So we always make a comment, but we don't know, have I made an extra effort to actually impress the coach and say, hey, I think I can play. Why don't you give me a chance? Do you have the guts to do that? Maybe most people don't, right? But sometimes by action, by going out there and making that extra effort or spending an extra hour instead of just doing exactly what you're expected to do, you have to go beyond that limit, right? To challenge somebody, right? It's why do we want to excel and get into different universities? Why do we want to excel and have a tuition master coming home? Why do we go and take extra classes when we play cricket and say, okay, I want to improve my batting, I want to improve my technique? The point is you have to do extra stuff to stand out, right? Because the competition is so stiff.
Yeah. The reason I asked that question is obviously not to get a clickbait for our episode. A lot of parents and the aspiring cricketers will be watching, and who better than you can advise them what they should focus on. You mentioned commitment, resilience, talent is one of the things. Work ethic is second to none, is what you have mentioned. So I hope all of you are making a note of that.
So Robin, you've coached in the IPL. Of course, you've actually been with one of the most fantastic teams. One thing which I always wonder about is because also in our career we manage a lot of teams. So one thing which we always wonder about is how did you manage diverse personalities when you're coaching the team, and especially when you have different nationalities and cultures.
I think there's some key things that you need to understand. One is you need to have enough information. So just like how you would study something and ensure that you have enough background, data, information, right? And you'd have some sort of communication. You try and find out a little more about certain players from different countries who you're not aware of. So you'd ask questions. You'd ask around. You'd ask people who have played with them. Because obviously when we pick a guy, we would have done some research, right? It's not just about his ability to play the sport. Because to answer your question in different ways, you come into an environment where it's pretty new to you. A lot of guys from outside, they have to adjust to this culture. Remember, I came from a totally different culture, right? So I understand that you have to go through this process. You have to embrace it. That is first thing, right? If your mindset is negative and there's a block, you're not going to get the best out of this situation. Now, if you're selected for a particular situation, right? You're not the main player in that team, right? You're one among 25, right? There's some very good players who have to sit out, but you have to understand why you're sitting out. Most people don't understand that because they feel, oh, I'm playing for my country, so I should be playing here. So when you come to play for a franchise team, if you bat at number 3 for your country, you may be batting at number 6 for a franchise team. So the roles become very different. So whoever we pick, it is definitely role-based. So we will look at multiple roles that they can play for the team, and you would want them to play a role that is comfortable to them. But you also have the flexibility of giving them different roles and see whether they can do that for you or not. Because when you're playing an opposition and let's say you're evenly balanced, how do you change your strategy and your tactics? These are some of the things that you will implement, right, during the course of the game. And when you have players who are like that, it's much easier to coach a team, right? Now, the challenges are we have to understand what they want, right? As opposed to what we want from them, right? What they can do. And try and see how we can integrate that based on what we want. So if you ask guy to do something, most guys, because just to give you an example where I'm coming from, if I say I want to bowl a Yorker today, for example, and I'm not used to bowling a Yorker, or I've never bowled a Yorker, it's going to take me 8 months to a year to execute that. I have to have the guts to go and execute that in a game. If I don't execute it in a game, I'm in trouble, right? But how do I execute it in a game? I have to execute it in practice matches, and be thoroughly confident that I can do it. Now, if I am warranted to execute it in a situation where I may win or lose a game, and I have that in my armory and I don't do it, I start doubting myself. Right? So, it's all about putting these things in place or into practice. Right? And I think it's important to understand from a player's perspective, what are his expectations, what are the protocols, what do franchisees want, right? Understand the pulse of that franchise and see how fast you can blend in. The faster you can blend in and observe, I told you, the powers of observation is very critical. You need to be observant. You need to be aware of what's going on around you. Now, as coaches, we try to make that easy for people, right? It's almost like putting a lot of stuff there, right? But you have to pick out a few things that you like and that you can do. Now, I cannot come and ask you to do 5 things because I just gave you an example of how long it takes to do one thing, right? So I would want to see with the skills that you have, whether I can get 2 things out of you that you can really execute for me during the course of this tournament, right? So if I can do that with 25 players, that is 50 new things I've done.
So basically, looking at one is looking at what's in it for them, rather than only what is in, obviously, but understanding the larger picture or helping them understand the larger picture. The other question also is about the differences in nationality, culture. How do you manage those,
I
and bring
think I
them?
think players are smart enough today to understand that it's a great opportunity to learn from others. And if players don't realize that they don't want to take that opportunity, I think they're foolish not to take the opportunity. Right? Now, for a young kid playing the sport today, right? There are a lot of young kids who are playing the sport. They also have a problem because you're playing among people who, in your life, you're playing with them for the first time. These are people who you look up to. International cricketers who you have never met in your life, but because of IPL, I'm meeting them, right? So it's like it's a
Great
golden
platform.
opportunity to see what you can grasp from it. So my advice really to the young cricketers when they go into an IPL team, it's not just about wanting to play for an IPL team. It's how much can I learn from this experience, right? I need to use this as a platform, and I always say this, and I say it with a lot of authority because you have a lot of coaching staff, a lot of people around, some of the best coaches around, some of the best trainers around, some of the best information around, because there's a lot of personal attention when you deal with franchise players. People have a lot more time to spend with you. You need to take that information and use it to enhance your cricket for the following year.
So, I just wanted to understand about the kind of some, maybe if you want to name them, you can, but without naming also, which were some of the most talented young players you have worked with? And, especially wanting to understand what are some of the qualities that, you saw that stood out in these talented young players. I know you mentioned a few of them, but just wanted to maybe pick one or two in your mind and talk about which what are those qualities that stand out in talented young
So I
players?
will try and see if I can go back and come to today.
Sure.
There were a lot of cricketers in the past who I played with who were extremely talented. I say it with a lot of conviction, right? Because we played in some tough eras, right? And some tough conditions. And I would think that in Tamil Nadu or in Hyderabad or in Karnataka in those days, at least in the south, who I knew, and some of the cricketers from the north and west, most of these guys could have played for India today. But it is T20 or 50 over cricket or even Test cricket. Because there were so few opportunities those days, right? With franchise cricket, every second person gets an opportunity to play, right? It's up to you to put every effort to make it count. So I'd say I can name enormous amount of people. So there is no one person, but there were many, many, many people, right? If you look at some of the people who I worked in the coaching space with, who were like extremely talented, I think RP Singh as a bowler was extremely talented, right? Probably underachieved, but extremely gifted, really gifted. Maybe he got injured. I don't know. I can't really remember. But then, for whatever reason, I felt he was out of the team quite early. If you look at someone like Ambati Raidu, of course, he went and played ICL. But I remember in 2003, when I started coaching with the under 19 team, so Viren Richards actually saw him get 100 against England. It was one of the most amazing hundreds. I think he got 160, if I'm not mistaken, and he won the game. We won that series 2-1 against England, in England. And those days, it was pretty unheard of, right? He was an exceptional talent, like really special then, right? Didn't get to play too much, right? Which is a little unfortunate in my book. Probably didn't get the right opportunities at the right time. In terms of talent, Rohit Sharma, exceptional. Some of the stuff he does, like, it's very few people, it's just a gift. But he's made that really count, right? L. Shivramakrishnan as a leg spinner.
Yeah.
I have seen very few people who can actually spin the ball like him. You would hear that fizz when he bowls. Probably the best left-arm spinner I played against was Virender Singh. They were two like exceptional talents, like super exceptional. Right? People talk about talent, but they were like poles apart. of course, Kapil Dev was the person who I really probably admired the most as a cricketer when I was growing up. Gavaskar was the one who I would follow a lot on TV. So it's not just about the talent, but also about the commitment, the performance, consistency becomes critical, right? Um, these are some of the qualities, right? I learned playing spin a lot from Brijesh Patel. What you need to do. They were the best players of spin in the world at that time, considered. So in terms of talent, there were so many different types of talent, right? In the West Indies, I would say you'd look at everyone. Everyone used to be quite brilliant with fielding, but many people would go unnoticed. But they were all quite brilliant in their own way.
So, because you spoke about fielding during your playing days for India, I mean, who are all the top fielders? Obviously, you were one of the great fielders.
I think Azhar was
By
pretty much
far,
everywhere. He was right up there. Jadeja was very good. And Jadeja was smart. He would read the game. It's about feeling. It's about reading the game also, no?
true.
Right? So we had, like in Tamil Nadu when we played Ranji Trophy and we won that Ranji Trophy, Vishiv was very good. Close into the wickets. Tall guy, but he would be right there. BB Chandrasekhar, the late BB, right? So L.J. Ramakrishnan was a very good fielder, right? So at the end of the day, these are some of the good fielders.
Anticipating.
Yeah, I mean, and then you have to trust the bowlers you're playing with.
It's almost like chess, I would think. You need to read the game and
Also, you need to trust the people you're playing with. That is critical, right? And remember those days, again, no protection, real protection.
That's true.
Right? So, yeah, so these are some of the names that I can really, lay out. There were a lot of guys in the West Indies who I thought were exceptionally talented, but you all probably wouldn't know them at all.
As an extension to that topic, which were some of the opponents that you really admired, and what was it that you people who you found it tough to kind of strategize against?
I think South Africa was a difficult team to score against.
in India or anywhere.
In general, right? They were always a exceptional fielding side. So you had to play slightly differently to beat them on the ground, right? So you probably had to hit over the top. And I thought they were one of the teams who would trouble us a lot because they would cover so much ground and area. It was not easy to get past them. And they were pretty regimented in their approach. So you had to have a slightly different strategy when you play against them. Some teams, I would say, I enjoyed playing against Australia the most because even they were super competitive, but you have to compete with them. Then the good thing about Australia is, most people didn't like the sort of sledging that would go on, but I think they would respect you a lot if you do well against them. To me, that gave you the most confidence as a player because when you are doing well against the best team, I think nothing else matters after that. And because it's all about gaining the respect of your opponents, right? It's like when Sachin goes into bat, in the early 90s, everyone, fully well, if you bowl a bad ball, it's hitting the fence, right?
Since you spoke about Sachin, my son has heard a lot about Sachin through me, obviously, and then he's watched a lot of old matches and things. Now he keeps saying Sachin, he's a big fan of Sachin. Just like my son, I'm sure there are a lot of other kids, the parents are talking about Sachin, and you have played alongside Sachin. What makes Sachin Sachin?
I think he was somebody who always wanted to be number one. Always. You'd look at his work ethics, and however good he was, he still wanted to get better, right? And he would always be trying to find a way to do something more, as opposed to just sitting around, So he was that sort of person. Anything he does, that whatever I know, he would want to perfect it, right? And I was witness to that. I was party to that on many, many occasions. I actually picked up a lot from him when we bowled in the nets, right? So I used to take my cue from bowling to him. I used to make it a point to want to actually bowl to him in the nets, because he would play very similarly to how we would want to play in a game.
Okay.
So, if you bowl a mad ball, it's 4 runs, right? So you put that as 4. At the end of your spell, you go on, right, okay, how many mad balls did I bowl? Or you would go and ask him and he would give you an honest opinion. No, it was very good today. Maybe you could have done this. And that was as good as any analysis that you would get,
Interesting.
right? Whereas just turning up and bowling without getting a feedback from someone who's playing you, and that is critical, no? Right, when you play the sport. So when you go into bat, for example, you get a small feedback of somebody when you're walking in, what's happening. So if they're ready to answer and they give you a clue, it's just a clue that you need, right? So it sort of triggers how you would want to tackle the opposition, or are you thinking the right way when you're sitting outside when you go into bat. So you're able to put that together quite fast.
Interesting. So going back to the example you gave about what is the most important attribute for aspiring cricketers, you mentioned one of the key things is if someone is turning up to school to study and do well, instead of looking at a first rank holder, the first rank holder may be getting 90 on 100. Sachin will think of always trying to get as close as 100.
Yes, 100%.
So that's the work ethic you're saying. Great, thanks.
So Robin, every dressing room has its anecdotes and legends. So are there any heartwarming, funny stories you have from back in the dressing room, something which contributed to making your contributing to the team camaraderie?
I wouldn't say that, but a lot of people were fairly superstitious.
Okay.
I was pretty much somebody who would be outside watching the game. I won't be sitting too much in a dressing room. Or I'd like to be, if I'm going into bat, for example, I wouldn't want too much noise around. I'd want to focus on what I need to do. Or later on when I played for India, we had a lot of, we could see on the television. So I'd look outside and then I'll have a glance inside and see what's going on to validate what I'm thinking. Because those days, as I said, we didn't have any analysis, so we didn't have any video, right? So these are some of the small things. So if you go into bat, you look on the big screen, and if you play the bad shot or you miss the ball, you want to wonder, what are you doing? You look at your foot position, head position, and stuff like that, right? Because these are the things that you want to correct ASAP, because you can get out the next ball. But yeah, I think, look, there were a lot of people who were superstitious. They'd put left pad on first, right pad on first. Some guys would have new socks, right? I think Srinath was somebody, if you're sitting around, he probably would take your bat up and you wouldn't know, and he'll go and bat with it. So things like that. He was someone who you had to be a little aware of with your stuff around. Not take it as in take it with, suddenly you'll be searching and the bat, Srinath is going with the bat, or Saul was somebody who was pretty superstitious. If he's played with someone's glove, and we were both left-handed, and if he's done well with that, well, he'd want to use that. So many, many small things, to be honest. I mean, like, I didn't have too many superstitions, but I just didn't like too much disturbance around me.
Since he spoke about dressing room, give us some examples or anecdotes from how does a winning dressing room look like. I'm sure all of you have been part of a lot of tournaments winning.
Look, it's a lot of people sometimes are relieved, right? They express their emotions very differently. Some people, I don't think people scream and stuff a lot. I think the younger generation today a lot more expressive. When we were playing, it was well done, congratulations. But I think what we did really well those days, we'd sit down, get together, people would have a small drink, or we'd spend some time together. So you'd spend a lot more time discussing the game or what has gone on, and that was equally good or probably better than sitting down and having a meeting. And that really worked quite a lot. So it's like there's a lot of takeaways from those conversations, right? And there'd be different groups, and even if you'd listen to people, we could run this, I did this today, stuff like that. I remember talking to the late ML Jaishma, and we played a game in Hyderabad, and I heard a lot about him when I came to India, right? And I used to want to understand why people used to talk about him in such a high manner. And he would tell me that, and there was a small thing, he would say that sometimes I'd go and talk to the batsman if I'm batting with somebody, but we won't say anything. We just wouldn't say anything. But the bowler would be thinking we'll be planning something. Or if I'm bowling, he would say, I'll be talking to the captain, but we won't really be doing anything. But the batsman, it's more a mental game, right? I'll be thinking, what is this plan? What's the next plan? What's the move? So it was a lot of strategy without saying it, right? But it's really to disturb your balance, really. And your thinking, to make you think very differently, to get you away from your plans. But yeah, and he was somebody who, when you listen to him, you realize that they were like super smart in their thought process, because they played with people who were also very, very resilient. And those days, you'd find a lot of cricketers in the old days would not give the wicket away. People talk about giving a wicket away, right? I don't mean just handing it. It's about the bowler. The bowler has to earn that right to get your wicket, right? When he gets your wicket, it's like, it's like a relief. It's like if I'm playing against an opposition and it's a strong opposition, there's no way I want him to get me out. It's like one up against me. That gets you a lot more determined. That determination has to come, right? So if you play the sport with that and keeping those things in mind, when you go out there to play and you adopt similar processes, right, and philosophies, it's very hard to fail.
Fantastic. Robin, obviously you've played for India for a very long time. I think 130 plus one-day games you've played. Can you share with us which has been the most unforgettable match of your career playing for India? And, during the game and the post-game celebration, tell us something which public will not be aware of.
I think, look, to be honest, almost every game was important to me. Every game was like the next game for me, or the last game. That's how I played. But I think for me, most important thing was to play the first game for India. Right. So when I went to West Indies the first time around in '89, it was a great moment, yes. But I don't think I really understood the magnitude of playing for India. It's the second phase of playing for India. When I played the first game against Australia, to me that was a serious turning point in more ways than one. Because, there was a long journey to get there, right? I traveled almost 48 or 50 hours then to play the game, and it was like a knockout game because we were going to play Ranji Trophy game leading up to that. So to get from Chennai to Chandigarh, it was a journey from Chennai to Goa via Bangalore by train, bus, road, flight, road. Then you get into the game. And you're playing against the best team in the world at that point in time. So for me, I knew fully well it was the only opportunity I'll get to play, right? Because it was a knockout game for India. It was Titan Cup, right? It was a knockout game for India. And I thought my thought process was like super positive. And there was not a negative bone or thought in my head, right? And when I went out there, things just fell into place. The good thing, I knew a lot of the people who I had played with because they were younger or played with me quite a lot in zone and locally in India. So that sort of, and I thought that made me quite easy. And I fell into the game quite easily. just did what I knew what to do. And I guess the biggest challenge really was to understand whether I can compete at that level, because you're going from here to here, right? And you're playing against the best team in the world. So, once I was able to do that, I think that was the turning point in my book, because my confidence level just went from
up.
here to here. Because to get confident, you have to perform
You
on
have
a
to
big
perform,
stage,
and yeah, absolutely.
without a doubt.
Absolutely. Since you spoke about, there's no negative thoughts in your mind. Are you someone who does a lot of self-talk before getting onto game?
I don't do self-talk, but I understand what I need to do. I try to understand where the red flags, what I can do. So first you have to understand your game and your preparation. Preparation is everything, right? And it doesn't mean if you prepare well, you will succeed, but you can't be disturbed. You have to have a very calm mind, right? So when you're calm, you're able to execute what you're doing quite well. So the longer you can stay calm, the more chances of succeeding, right? Because you can only do so much. If you want to try and go beyond that limit, then you have to practice like that. But when you're trying to super exceed, right, the risk is also quite high. So you have to understand that there's a risk of failing also.
Yeah. Since you spoke about being calm and the positive impact of that, as an individual, I mean, whatever little I know you, right? I mean, I've always seen you calm and very balanced. So my question is, have you ever been upset or annoyed while playing and while coaching?
Many times.
Really?
Yeah, many times. But you have to know how to hide it, and you can't show it. Right? So sometimes you might think what is happening on the field is wrong, even if you want to show it. But if you show it and it doesn't work, it's almost like letting the team down. Right? So you can talk about these things after. A lot of people don't like you saying it, right? There were a few incidents, many incidents, which I did point out after the game. But what happens? A lot of people, a lot of players, right, or even when we coach, you realize that a lot of people just do not want you to talk to them in front of other people, right? And that is something you have to learn very fast.
These days, even kids don't.
Yeah. So no, even older people, right?
True.
Because they can have a conversation with you, right? But in the heat of the moment, sometimes you say something, right? But it's really to try and calm down. So sometimes it's better not to say much. So I mean, I'm somebody. Sometimes I don't like to talk. When I'm annoyed, it's like I'm really annoyed. So you need to cool off, get away from those people. So stay away from the group. Spend some time. Give yourself some time alone, or spend it with other people, and then decide how you want to go about things.
Okay. So, has there been any difference in the way you process this emotions while you're a player or a captain or being a coach? Has there been any difference in the way you process, or it's the same process? Would you explain?
There'll be a lot of difference. I mean, coaching, you're looking at so many other aspects. But if I feel someone is not doing the things that is required, I have the authority to say, hey, and you're not doing this. You're a danger to the team. You'll have to sit out. Right. But when you're a player, you don't have those options. Right. You need to make sure that you get back on track really fast, because if you're not playing well enough and someone comes and tell you, you need to take it in the right spirit, because somebody will tell you because you're really not doing well. So my philosophy is very simple. If I play well and I know I have played my role, and I still think I could have done much more than what I did in international cricket, but I was always thought that team was always first. Always. Whether it is coaching, whether it is cricket, whatever, right? So there is not a selfish thought the way I would want to play cricket. Right? To me, cricket is selfish to a large extent. But when there is a time to play for the team, you have to play for the team. Today we talk about it a lot in India, because that's not how most people are grown up in India. But if you see culturally, if you look at an Australian team, right, and I take Australia as an example because they can't be so good in the sport for so long if you don't do those things right. So we've always had a lot of really good individuals, but we've never put that together. Today, I think franchise cricket has helped that way. T20 has helped that way because you don't have a choice. If you don't play a role, the team loses. I can't transfer the role to somebody else who is not good at the role. He'll get slaughtered. So it's about team, in my opinion, and it's about how you put things together, how you take things. There's so many games there, right? You need to be able to take it in your stride, right? And move on very fast. Not many people can do that.
Robin, with a lot of franchisee cricket happening, I recently got to know there's obviously T20 is there, then T10 is there. Now I also heard there is going to be 15 over each game happening in this part of the world, is what I heard. How do you see the commercialization of cricket? Is it good for the sport? That's point number one. And how do we continue to keep the sport clean? Point number two. And three, in terms of sports management, are there any innovations you think can transform the way the sport is played, specifically cricket?
So, yes, it's good for the sport, but I think we need to draw a line somewhere, right? We can't have. I think the danger is that most people are focusing only towards playing T20, right? And if you look at commercialization, right, after a certain point, you can only commercialize so much. Okay. If you talk to a businessman, right, yeah, he wants a product, he wants something that he can advertise, but that's okay if the company is doing well, right? If the company does not do well, right, that's gone. The sport is totally dependent on who's sponsoring the sport. Now, if I'm having 10 tournaments in the space of 2 months, who is going to sponsor
So
it?
company has to prioritize where they want to associate
Yes.
themselves with and invest.
So at the end of the day, it can be good and it can be bad, right? So it depends on how much there is growth in that particular area where you're playing a sport. So let's say you go to the US, right? How many people know the sport in the US? People talk about it, but cricket is just one of these sports in the US. It's not even one of the top sports in the US, right? It's not even a priority sport. It's a priority sport for Indians, but not for other parts of the US, for example. If you look at, say, China, it is football. If you look at Japan, it is football and other things, right? But yes, because our population is so huge, it's one of these sports that we resonate with and we want to be involved with. I think we need to be a little careful of how much cricket we have.
Okay.
Right? Because, look, you get stale watching the game after a point, whoever it may be, right? You don't want to see the same players playing over and over again. What not new are you going to see? And I would say, after a point, they develop a lot of bad habits. They play bad cricket, they play bad shots. So I would say you need to keep yourself fresh, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. How do you continue to keep the sport clean? I'm not sure whether all these franchises happening around the world, does it need to have an approval from the respective boards or?
I think most of the sports have to have approval from the boards. I know in India, for example, even if a club side come into India, you need to get approval from BCCI. Even if I'm involved with Tamil Nadu cricket as a consultant, and I know we went on to England, and even there's another tour that we are planning, we have to take approval from BCCI, right? So I think they have the game under control, and if the game can be under control like that in other parts of the world, then you'll be able to control it to some extent. Now, if you look at West Indies cricket, no one is playing for West Indies cricket. Now, how will they survive? They are supposed to be a test playing nation, right? It's not like only T20 cricket is going to make you money, right? That's why I am always of the opinion that you need to learn the game. You can't survive in T20 for long if you don't know the basics of the game. You don't grow with the sport in the longer version of the game, at least to a point. If you choose not to play the longer version, that's a different thing. Then you are putting yourself in danger of being there or not being there in the sport. That is your choice.
Is making an interesting point because this long debate on whether Test cricket will continue to exist and continue to be exciting. What are your thoughts on that?
I think this cricket can always be exciting, right? It depends on what type of wickets you give. If you keep the game, maybe not 5 days, but if you maybe shorten the game into 4 days, if necessary. But if you see, most of the test matches are not even going 5 days today, right? But I'd still say that it's a sport, at least in India, right? Because we have the numbers, or in Asia, it will stay. Australia, I don't think will allow the test cricket to go down because they see it that way. England is the same, right? It's for other countries to feel the same way, right?
And is it fair?
Maybe you'll probably have to have an India-England series in New Zealand. Who knows?
Interesting. That would be interesting.
You can change the process, right?
Yeah,
Instead
they can bring some excitement and some innovation.
Yeah,
the way it is.
for countries to maybe have a chance of making maybe just a thought process, right?
Yeah, I understand.
Right. So an India-Australia game, maybe it's happening here, but people might want to see an India-England game in Australia. We never play England in Australia. It'll be an interesting concept, right?
I hope all the boards and cricketing nations are watching this because that'll be very interesting, actually.
Right. Just like how we used to play these tri-series, right? Before, maybe you can have 4 teams playing a test series instead of playing each other. You play in one country and then you go to another country, and maybe you can keep the sport alive in all the other countries where the money gets distributed there, right? There is a lot of.
Correct. That's a great idea. Is it fair that if India visits some other country or some other country visit India, I think more or less what I've heard and what I've seen as well is the pitch is made conducive for the country which is hosting. How do you see? What's your point of view on that?
I think every country does it, right? It's a question of to what extent it's being done, right? Now, I am no one to say the pitch is. Yes, you know when a wicket is underprepared, right? But you also know when people are not good enough, right? So if you look at Australia, people thought we'll get slaughtered in Australia. But I think the Indian batters are as good as playing fast bowlers as anybody else in the world today. It's a misconception.
True.
Right? Our Indian fast bowlers are very good in conditions where there is assistance. Right? Because we are skill-based. So when you are skill-based, you will survive in any conditions. That's why in my book, we always do well in Australia. And I think in this series, we will beat them 3-1, as opposed to what people are saying.
Wow, that's a very brave and bold prediction. I wish to, for sure. And I think so. I mean, I agree with you. I think we've got a solid team. So hopefully we'll do that. Were you coaching a franchisee when Bumrah was playing for that franchisee? Were you still coaching that franchisee?
Bumrah came into MI, I think in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. So I've known Bumrah from the time he came into franchise cricket.
Did you always knew that Bumrah is going to be Bumrah?
Look, I cannot say that I knew Bumrah will be Bumrah, but what I can tell you is the guy is very intelligent, right? He was always ambitious, right? Of course, ambitious is the wrong word. He always wanted to succeed. Let me put it like that. And when you sit, because when I sit in the back of the bus, and Bumrah sits on the other side, and when you talk to him or you listen to him talk, or you hear him speaking to others, you know he knows exactly what he wants to do. Most guys at his age will not have a clue. And it's not just about talking about it. You talk about those things only if your work ethics is good. You've put in the hard yards. You know what you're doing. Right? I think, and he learned a lot from Malinga because he wanted to do a lot of stuff that Malinga does well, which he does. Right? and he's somebody who has learnt on the job. I think he's a very
Keen observer
intelligent,
and learns,
very intelligent guy. To
reads
be
the game
honest.
really
Yeah.
well.
I mean, if you look at the way he led the team, was like superb. I thought he was like spot on.
Great. So I'm going to bring you back to this part of the world. You've been a director for UAE cricket. How do you see the sport evolving here in Middle East?
Well, there's a lot of cricket in over here, but the cricket is not really structured the way it should be. During my time, when I was here, like a couple of years back, people would tell you, well, we don't have enough cricketers. Actually, you have a lot of cricket here, probably more than anywhere else that you'd play. But the ambition for people to play the sport is very short term. Right? Cricket is not a short term game. It is a long term game if you want to survive in the sport. And if you're thinking in short term, then you don't last long in the sport. And there will always be a transition all the time. You come and you go, you come and you go. And most people think, oh, I'm playing for UAE. But you see them after 2 matches, they don't even exist. Right? So where is the staying capacity? So I think I thought we had a really good thing going, because when I came here, we won almost everything. Women's, under 19, the senior team, we qualified for World Cup. Whatever they wanted to do, they did. But I think they have to really put some processes in place and have some really good systems in place for the sport to really grow. Because it is a transitional place. It is an expensive place, right? Franchise cricket will help this part of the world if a guy wants to be a hardcore professional. But if you want to be a hardcore professional, you need to really work like a hardcore professional. Otherwise, they will play professionally for 2 years and forget about the sport after that. It's just about survival, making money. It doesn't help after a point.
Any picks, top 4 teams in the next season of IPL who's going to make to playoffs?
I've not seen all the teams very clearly, right? But whatever I've seen, I think SRH has done a fairly good job. They have kept the core side. Guys are playing well currently. So they should be a pretty good team to contend with. I'm not saying they're top 4, but they'll be a pretty good team to contend with. MI for sure. I think they would want to turn things around. So I'd definitely put them there. I'd say Calcutta would want to be in the top 4. They've also, so maybe they'll be around. Rest of the teams, I didn't really go into too much into it, to be honest. I didn't even look too much into RCB's team or even Delhi's team. I know who all were picked, but if I look at the team, then I'll be able to really visualize and tell you whether I think they have the stuff to do it or not. I'm not saying I'll be right, but unless I look into those things, it's very hard to make a decision now.
Robin, we heard something about Robin's sports relationship, Robin Singh's scholarship program. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to what Nagaraj said earlier. So that's one of the things I feel is lacking here. So in the sport here, I think we want to implement some really good programs so that we will try and pick up people who are good and probably sponsor their kit, sponsor their tuition or their training for the full year, and then or even their education. Apart from that, we will probably take them on tours. So we want to do the whole package so that a kid or a player is free to focus on the cricket and to give him an ample opportunity and the right guidance, coaching that needs to be done to see how he can enhance his future or his cricket future progressively.
This is in the UAE?
This is going to be in the UAE.
And how do you select the?
We will do a selection process, but we will select people who we think can make the cut. So it'll be an intensive program. It'll be like a 5-layer program. So we'll go through a process first before we do the selection. So it's a pretty fair program, so that people come up and there's value for what we are doing. So it's a great opportunity. And then of course, with what my coaching experience and the things that we have to implement to put a young kid in the right space, what he needs to do, what he need not do, how to go about it, what are things he needs to do, and a lot of stuff that we spoke about during this, right? So we can actually give them, a head start, a serious head start going forward. And if there are opportunities for people to play into franchise teams, we'll try and see how much we can help them as well. But I think the important thing is to help people progress to the next level of cricket if we feel they have the talent.
So 2 questions on that. When is this program going to be launched, and how can people register?
I think there will be some flyers and information that will go out, right? So we have approached quite a few schools. So we'll be approaching many more. And we'll probably do this sometime in Jan, the selection process, after which once we select people, right, it can be 1, it can be 5, it can be 10, it can be 15, but ideally we would like to form a team.
And that will also add to what Nagaraj said about how we can grow cricket in the Middle East and probably bring in that kind of long-term thinking.
Yeah, so that's one of the ideas that I want to implement, right? Because it's sadly lacking here, right? A lot of people want their kids to do well, fair enough, but there's a long process. You have to have a lot of patience.
First of all, Robin, thank you for giving your time, because with whatever little I know you, that you do not give interviews and you don't go for podcasts. So really appreciate your time and having that faith in us to come for this podcast. The second thing I wanted to kind of tell you is my life has come full circle. I do not know if you remember, I think I've spoken about it some time back. I'm not sure whether it was in Chemplast or India Cements. As a part of, under 16, some school teams were brought. I was part of the team which had come to one of your nets. I do not know if it's Chemplast or India Cements. And you kind of gave us a master class of, how to grip the ball and how to bowl Yorkers. I'm not sure if I completely remember, but I think one thing which stayed with me is look at the bails and then release the ball or something. I don't know. Have you ever?
I can't even remember what I told you.
Okay, you don't remember what you have told me.
And you're talking about many
years
moons back,
I
right?
was probably in grade 8 or 9. But have you practiced in India Cements or Chemplast? Because one of these places I had come. I do not know which
India
ones.
Cements I didn't play for.
So
So it could be Chemplast or
Okay.
it could be India Pistons. These
India
are the two.
Pistons. Okay.
These are the 2 company teams I played for in Chennai.
Okay. I mean, because
could have been one of the 2.
no, my school team was actually brought in to kind of get a master class from you and get encouragement from you.
Could have been Chemplast. I don't know.
Chemplast.
Yeah, I don't think it was India Pistons.
When
so
was
much.
in 9th grade? It's a long time ago. Thank you very much again. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate, and hopefully see you soon in January again. You'll be here
Yeah, hopefully. Look
coaching
forward.
Mumbai Emirates. Last time you guys got the trophy, so
Yeah,
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, yeah. And of course, when I come out here, it's to win, really and truly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you for your time.